Sometimes in the world of beauty aesthetics, it's the wild, wild west. Mixed information, unsafe practices, non-ethical standards. There's a lot of misinformation. Well, there's a new sheriff in town, and she ain't having it. So if you're a fellow outlaw, and we know you are, saddle up, dust off those spurs, and let's ride off into the sunset, all the while being beautiful and educated. Y'all be safe out on the trail. This is the JKH Beauty Outlaw. And now your host, a seasoned aesthetic entrepreneur, registered nurse, and a licensed esthetician, Jerry Hurst.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Beauty Outlaws podcast. And this is episode 3, and I'm super excited today to introduce you to Danielle Ruggiero. She is a physician's assistant here in California, located in beautiful Palos Verdes. She's a new upcoming entrepreneur in the field, but has years of experience going back to 2006 in the world of plastics. I can't wait to pick her brain and find out all things disasters, complications. We're gonna hit and talk about aspirations. Hope you guys enjoy the podcast. Please like and subscribe to our channel. It's super important so we can keep bringing this great content and awesome interviews to you. So today I'm honored to have Danielle. She's actually a physician's assistant here on our show today to discuss all things aesthetics. And I met you at a seminar we went to, and I thought, I like that gal. There was a lot of us there, and I sent Charlotte, my assistant, over just to kind of meet you. And we approached you, and you were so gracious. And I love that you're kind of a Southern California girl, and you're from Palos Verdes, and you drove all the way down here to be in studio. And I thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here. I'm honored to be here, especially after other guests that I've seen on this podcast. It's big shoes to fill, so definitely appreciative for the invite. And it's perfect timing. I've actually just opened my own practice, so I'm trying to, get myself out there in the community, and I just love what you're doing. I love this whole idea of this wild, wild west in aesthetics. It really is. So I am so excited to be here and kind of dive deep into it and chat all things aesthetics and wellness and see where it goes.
Well, with that said, I want to know about you, because what makes you tick now? You're a physician's assistant, but first start with your story. How did you get into this industry? Was this even what you were thinking, being a physician's assistant back in the early days?
So great question. How much time do we have?
As much time as you want.
So, it's funny because I actually grew up in New York City. I am a New York City girl, and I was initially set to go to pre-med. I had a scholarship for University of Miami. I was all set. I had some family down there. And then my senior year of high school, unfortunately, I was one of the very first days of school, and this was a beautiful school in Staten Island, kind of overlooking the city. We had this great skyline view. And I don't have to say very much about 9/11 because everybody knows that day. It's synonymous with, where was everybody at that moment? We all can recall what we were doing.
Absolutely.
And, my classmates and I just went outside that morning because we knew something was off. The teachers weren't really saying anything. And we stood outside and we watched the second plane hit and we watched the first building go down. And, at that moment, I think no one really knew what was going on. But in the days and weeks and months that followed, what I saw in New York City was this amazing sense of community. And it really kind of changed my perspective on everything. And I just wanted to get out there and help. To be honest, I didn't even know what a PA was. This is, over 20 years ago now when I was going into college. So I had no idea that this was even a real profession. I just was unaware. And so there was actually a very nice liberal arts college close to where I grew up, and they had this phenomenal PA program. And so it just so happened that they were doing their final rounds of interviews, and I guess they liked me. I got in. It was an accelerated program. And so I went through it. And it was really great because as a student, I really do feel like I got to help. I got to impact the city when they needed it most. And
At the time, that's what I love.
Yeah.
You really got to see it right firsthand when you were going through the program.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I graduated at 20 in New York City. I went year round, double my major. I did Bachelor of Science and PA studies at the same time. So when I graduated, I actually wasn't even old enough to prescribe medication yet. I had to wait until my 21st birthday in New York State. But it's just been this amazing journey since then. And everything up until this point has kind of led me here. And there's been some twists and turns along the path, but gradually I think I found my niche. I found what I love, and that's aesthetics and wellness.
Did you practice in any other, I know PAs, tell us a little bit about a PA. Because
Sure.
me as a nurse, we have our own path to NP. A PA, what is the path of a PA?
It's different, and it has evolved a great deal. I recently listened to Nicola Lowry talk about this, and she talks about how the PA profession originated. It's actually really interesting. Back in the late 60s in the Vietnam War, there were a lot of medics that were trained on the sidelines, and they were essentially, doing surgeries and things for patients, for veterans and military men. And when they got back to the States, they really didn't know what to do with these highly skilled, highly trained medical professionals. And so that's kind of how Duke first began its PA program. They were the first PA program, I want to say 1968 or 69. Somewhere around there is when the first class of PAs graduated. And since then, the profession really has evolved. Nowadays, it is, for the most part, you have to have a master's in order to graduate. When I went, 20 years ago, that wasn't really an option. So now I have since then, advanced my own education. I am getting a Doctor of Medical Science degree right now. But it's a little bit different. We're trained a little bit more, I like to call it a crash course in med school, as opposed to, patient nursing care. Whereas, if you're becoming an NP, you're there, you're doing nursing care with patients, and then you're kind of, I believe, getting your academic curriculum and all of that at the same time. We just do a crash course, within anywhere from 2 to 5 years postgraduate from your Bachelor of Science.
Okay.
So
and then you
dive in.
Okay, so back then, was there a certification course or a test that you had to take?
Oh, absolutely.
Or could you just work as a PA back then?
No. So I have heard of instances back then where you could work as a PA, but you have to be certified in order to have any kind of credibility. So NCCPA is the National Commission for Certification of PAs. It is a grueling test. You have to sit for your boards, and the first time that you do it, it's really the most nerve-wracking experience I've ever had in my life. And we actually have to retake our board certification every 7 to 10 years, which is tough because a lot of PAs focus on one specialty. And because we're trained in all things, we have to sit for our boards on everything from pediatrics to cardiology to psychology. So it's challenging, but it also is a good opportunity to always stay abridged of, the most current and up-to-date medical practices.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Fast forward now, what was your first introduction into the world of aesthetics? The big world of aesthetics now, right?
The wild, wild west. Yes, absolutely. So I actually first went into a plastic surgery role right out of PA school. I worked at Cornell, which was just a phenomenal experience. But I was there for over a year, and I felt like I was becoming too subspecialized too early on. I wanted a little bit more real hands-on patient care. So I actually started working for some of the lower income and underprivileged areas in trauma and surgery. And it gave me this wonderful opportunity to, be able to cover vascular surgery, neurosurgery, plastic surgery. And it really just honed my skills as a provider. But it also made me really aware of how to handle emergency situations and how to stay calm. And I think it's so important as a provider. Experience teaches you how to handle certain situations.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah. So I
We're
think
going to talk about that.
absolutely. But to be able to know what to do when a patient is having a vasovagal or passing out, or, God forbid, there's the VO, which we may or may not get into.
Yes, we will.
You need to stay calm, and you need to just go back to your drawing board in your mind. Okay, here's my protocol. Here are my steps. This is what I do. But I think if you don't have that fundamental training and that experience, it really can be hard to know what to do and know what to handle and how to do that. So again, I think every career choice that I've taken for the past 20 years has kind of led me here. But it was actually wellness that got me into aesthetics, which is a little bit of a different route than I think most people take.
What part of wellness did you go into first? Because that's a big world now too, right? Hormone therapy, PRF, PRP. There's a lot going on in wellness.
There is a ton, and it makes me really happy, and it's so exciting to me. But it was actually following my own pregnancy. I got very sick, and I was, in New York City, I thought I was super healthy. I did my SoulCycle classes every day, and I had a personal trainer, and I was eating my kale salads for lunch. So I thought I was like the epitome of good health. But then I got pregnant, and I wound up getting really sick and having gestational diabetes and all these things. And I couldn't figure it out. So it kind of led me on my own path of wellness. So I began studying yoga and Ayurveda and some more non-traditional modalities. And I couldn't quite figure out how to merge that into Western medicine because it's still kind of taboo. And if something isn't clinically proven or it doesn't have a lot of data behind it, it's hard to be able to merge that into the Western medical field. So I really just started trying to figure out how to adapt this integrated approach. And it's evolved. And I guess if you were to say it's anything, it's more like a functional medicine approach. But I had all this background in plastic surgery, and I loved, aesthetically helping people look and feel their best. Not perfect, because I think that's another chapter that we could get into, but just optimizing, making someone look and feel their absolute best. And so the two marry.
I want to bring up, it sounds like you had a lot of experience with the psychosocial, right? That's something that's very important in the beauty industry and aesthetics, is a lot of people haven't had that ability to experience and assess a patient, that this may not be the right, we may need to not do a procedure on them, right? Or they have some issues. You probably saw a lot of that, right? Being in plastics?
Absolutely. I think body dysmorphia is a huge thing. And I certainly hope that everybody out there is screening their patients for it. Aesthetics is a tricky field, right? Because so many of us are entrepreneurs, we're business owners, and as a business, you need capital. But to what extent are you willing to do that? I think we have to have integrity. I think we have to really abide by what we're here for first and foremost, and that is for helping patients and doing no harm. So I think that you really have to be able to sit and spend time with your patients, talk to them, get to know them a little bit. A lot of times, it doesn't take much to see, I think there's a little bit more going on here than just someone wanting bigger lips or someone wanting this or that. Right. Are there some other issues that may be at play here? So having integrity.
And that's a lot of what I see missing is the money is so big in this industry that people aren't willing to, they look the other way when they have a patient that really needs something else. We may not be the right person for them, and it's up to us to guide them. And the assessment is important, right? Having the time to sit down. How do you run an assessment with a new patient? How long does your consultation last? How do you do that at your practice?
So in an ideal world, I would love to spend about 30 to 40 minutes with a patient truly on their first consultation, because I really believe you have to have a bit more of a holistic angle. If someone is coming in with really wrinkled, leathery skin and they just want IPL, are you really going to address the bigger issues at play? Their sun damage, are they smoking? Are they drinking enough water? Are they eating the right foods? So all of those things ideally should be factored into an assessment for me. I have the liberty now because I have my own practice that I can dictate how long I want to spend. And I'm also, because I'm just building and growing, I have a little bit more time with each of my patients. So I enjoy that, being able to spend that 30, 40 minutes with a patient, just getting to know them. And a lot of times that's what also will really help to build trust and a relationship with the patient. And at the end of the day, that's the people I want. And if someone is there just wanting XYZ to fix or to correct or to enhance, maybe we're not the best fit. And I think we have to step back and acknowledge that sometimes and be okay with that.
I find that very honorable. I really do. We need more providers like you, for sure. And when did you open up your practice? Is this a recent thing for you?
Very recent, very, very recent. So I'd like to say it's been in the works for a very long time now, about 3 years. I have been looking and building and trying to figure out where to open and, how to market my niche. But I literally just opened doors about a month ago, had my grand opening on March 3rd. So yeah, it's been a busy few months. But finally, past that point, I'm open. And it's been wonderful. It's a learning curve for sure. You're a business owner, a successful business owner. It takes work and blood and sweat and tears. And it's sacrifice,
It's a baby.
It is a baby.
It's a baby.
I've got 2 of those on top of this baby.
So you have 3 now.
Plus a puppy.
Plus 4.
So yeah, exactly.
And maybe a husband, sometimes 5.
No, not anymore. But, it's okay. That's okay. I'm very happy.
That's okay, right?
With my
Life's a journey.
It is a journey, absolutely. And, we go on these crazy paths and we just have to have faith and have hope that it's all the way it's meant to be.
So are you, as a PA in California, we'll talk scope a little bit.
Sure.
Okay? So as a PA in California, what is your scope and how do you function? How do you work independently in your med spa? Tell me how that panned out for you when you opened up your spa.
Absolutely. So I am blessed to have a wonderful medical director, Dr. Brian Levine. He has been in the industry for a very long time, and we actually became good friends through the industry. I don't like to use that word always, but through the industry, we got to know each other. And so I feel very supported knowing that, if something goes wrong, I can always give him a call. He'll be there, as I need him to be. But I think it goes back a little bit further than that because, as a PA with experience, you have to have a level of trust in yourself. And there is nothing that I would do to a patient if I did not know how to get out of it or fix it. And I think that's really important.
Are you guys listening to
for
this?
New
Super
providers
important.
out there. And a surgeon once told me this in the OR, and I will never forget it. He said, if I don't know how to get out of something, I won't do it. And it's so, so important because when you are taking that step and you're embarking on this pseudo-independent journey, you need to know that you're going to be able to handle it when things go awry. And they will. Don't be naive to think that they won't because they will. So knowing your anatomy, knowing your education, and, having a really good foundation, but also, again, it comes back to integrity. So I'm wonderful in that I have a great medical director, but I also have a community. I know all of the local med spas around me and the plastic surgeons, and I know those that I can give a call and say, hey, you know what? I think I'm in a situation, do you have some extra Hylenex or something? Not that that's happened. This is hypothetical, but I know I have my community. And I think that that's really, really important as well, is making sure that no matter what your level of autonomy is or isn't, that you have resources and you have people that you can call upon. So,
yes.
Yeah.
So you have your round table of people, as I like to call it.
Absolutely.
Your resources, and you don't do anything you can't get yourself out of.
Nope.
I love that. And that is what made me passionate about doing this podcast, was we have too many unexperienced individuals that are ready to go out there after they've gotten their license and guns a-blazing. And the less you know, of course, the more naive you are, right? I'm really personally open to ideas from other providers and what they think about the future of this aesthetics industry and what your thoughts are on an accreditation program, an apprenticeship after you are out of school for a time. Even, I think Suzanne mentioned on my podcast, even a labor and delivery nurse. She does an 8-week orientation rotation without her seeing a patient individually. She is mentored and followed and guided through the process. So what's your thoughts? I know I've opened a can of worms when I say this, but what's your thoughts on this?
Again, how much time do we have? Because I have a lot of thoughts on it. And, I hate to say it, this might piss people off. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to stir waves. But I think, the time is coming where it may be a matter of time before regulations start falling. And certainly here in California, we're already seeing that, when it comes to IV hydration, things like that. All it takes is one bad scenario to kind of stir waves for everybody. So, back when I was training, and I'll use neurosurgery for an example because that was one of the fields that I was in very early on and spent a few years in. I always maintained plastic surgery, but neurosurgery was something that I really enjoyed for a long time. And before I could ever do anything to a patient, you see one, you assist on one, you do one supervised, and you have to keep doing them supervised until you get checked off for your competency, right? And every single procedure, from a burr hole to even just a GCS assessment in the trauma bay, all of these things have to be checked off, and you have to be proven competent before you can be left on call at the hospital. And I used to cover overnights at 2 a.m. If a 13-year-old comes in a trauma, you need to be able to know what you're doing. And those surgeons need to be able to trust you as a PA to make the right calls, to do what needs to be done, get the patient to the OR. And so, it's almost bizarre to me that we are in this field and there isn't any type of accreditation. But then it also brings it back to the point that this is essentially, for better or worse, a cash-based business, right? Mm-hmm. So when you start taking insurance out of the equation, I think you start taking out some of the legal parameters that go around procedures. Mm-hmm. And so that's why, we can see some rogue people out there that might be kind of going to their own beat. And we need to be very careful, I think.
I'm worried if we don't set some guidelines and regulations, it'll be regulated for us. And I'm not sure if any of us want that. I think we'd like a say, right? Because I think there's a place for new nurses and new PAs. There is a place, but how does that look, right? For instance, vascular occlusions. A vascular occlusion, most people listening to this podcast will know what that is. That is when an artery has been blocked or compressed where you've injected an implant or a filler. I don't know which one we're calling it now. It looks like we're moving into the world implant, which is also litigious, I believe. They're very dangerous. And if you can't get yourself out of that and your patient out of that, you can cause blindness, necrosis. Boy, the list goes on. Have you ever seen or had a vascular occlusion?
Oh my gosh, I need some wood because
you haven't?
So seen, yes, but I have not had one. I think, again, it really goes back to the fundamentals of safety. And listen, when HA fillers first came on the market, nobody even knew what a VO was. It wasn't described. And back in 2006, when I was working in plastics, no one spoke about it, And so it's something that unfortunately we've learned over the years. And this is a new field of medicine. I just want to remind everybody that this is new. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's important, number one, don't always jump on the newest fad or the newest bandwagon because, until I see something for a little while and I see its efficacy and its safety profiles, I'm not always one to just kind of jump on the newest procedure until I know that it's safe and it's something that I can do competently. But yes, VOs are scary. And again, I think you need to be able to know that protocol, memorize it, have your kit in your office, whether it's in your injectable room, have somebody, whether it's a receptionist or an MA or somebody that knows that protocol as well. You have your people on speed dial that you can call if you need something. You make sure your Hylenex is up to date and you have a good supply of it.
It's a med spa trauma.
It is.
You're calling a med spa trauma in that moment, and you were gathering your resources and you were trying to do everything to mitigate that, right? They are frightening. And again, I've never seen one myself either. I've never had one, thank goodness. But things are changing with the volume of injectables going up, new people in the industry. And this is where you and I both see it the same way. We're going to need some educational parameters out there. What about a cadaver class? You think that maybe should be part of an accreditation program or?
I think it's a great idea. So I'm actually doing one next month at AmSpa. And I do these, I think all good injectors, all good providers are constantly pursuing education. Things are always changing and evolving. What we know is always changing and evolving. So I do think cadavers are important just to get a good grip on your anatomy, make sure you really understand it and get a chance to play with those vessels, see what you can do. Can I cannulate this with a cannula? Can I, or is a needle more likely? Just, get a chance to get that hands-on.
It gives you that, I call it respect. When you think you know everything and you think you've seen it from a video or a diagram and you take that blade and you're like, oh boy, I went a little deep. You're a little shocked. You're kind of taken back, and it really does give you a place where you're humbled and you think, am I comfortable in doing these procedures, right? Can I do something I can get out of? So, you're taking one from AmSpa, and have you taken? Oh, how much are they nowadays? What are they costing? Are they still about $5,000?
They're pricey. They are about $5,000. I love the team that is going to be at AmSpa doing it. So I wanted to just get in there. And again, it doesn't matter how experienced you are. I think you can always gain something from a cadaver course. I gained a ton from my years in the OR. And there is a little bit of a difference when you're in the operating room and there's live blood pumping and you're watching that vessel versus a cadaver. But still, it really helps to just get that fundamental anatomy down. I love AmSpa personally. I think it's a great organization. It's become a good community, and I really do like the educational content that they put out there. As PAs, we do have to have continuing medical education, and I don't know exactly what the rules are for NPs. I know it's similar, but we have to have 100 hours every 2 years, 50 of which are Category 1. So, for me, I love to use those Category 1 hours at educational conferences, and what a better way than to actually perfect something that I'm doing and hoping to keep patients safe. So,
do you in your practice? I know that you mentioned you're very holistic in your practice, dealing with the whole person, right? What are some of the unique things that you've brought into your practice that is helping to serve your clientele?
So I think I like to call myself, when you say holistic, I still feel like that has a little bit of a stigma. I mean, here in California, maybe a little bit less so than other places like New York. But, when I say holistic, to me, it's enhancing natural beauty. For so long, aesthetics, I think, has been really catered to a very specific demographic. We see the Kardashians, we see all of these influencers, and so many young women and men out there kind of have this notion in their mind of what perfection is. And it's perfection according to what they see on social media. And, that's just not what I'm looking for. I really think that there are so many people out there who may be too uncomfortable to go out in public or try to apply for that job because they have something that's really troubling them or that's bothersome, but they never really thought a med spa was a place where they would be welcomed. And so my whole spiel is really, aesthetics and wellness for all. I want everyone that comes into my practice to feel happy, healthy, and sexy. And, when you think about that word sexy, it's not so much about, strutting your stuff, but it's about feeling empowered and confident. And sometimes all it takes is just a little bit. I'm more focused on a natural approach. So I love PRP, I love PRF, but I really like to get to the root of what's causing the issue. Is there something preventable here that I can maybe help this patient with, whether it's good skincare products, whether it's just sunscreen, whether it's nutrition or hydration, stress. Stress causes a lot more than we give it credit for, unfortunately. But really taking this approach into patient care, even in a field such as aesthetics, where there is a lot more behind the scenes that's at play with some of these things. So the fillers and the Botox, that's icing on the cake. I love to do those things. But I think it's really about fixing the whole first and trying to take that angle into treating every patient.
Well, and a group of the transgender community is a big part of this group who maybe don't feel as confident as they should feel or they'd like to feel. And there is a world there for them in aesthetics too in med spa, right?
Absolutely.
And I think you see a lot of patients that are transitioning or maybe want to look more feminine or more masculine. And we can do that with many things, right? But do you use filler for that in your practice?
Absolutely.
One of the things?
Absolutely. And I think, there are certain indications where, if it's someone transitioning, you want to be really mindful and respectful. And, sometimes it's a journey for them, and doing anything too drastic up front sometimes, may not be the best approach. So I like to take more of a gradual approach. But yes, I do think that fillers are a great way that you can enhance what it is they're looking for, whether it's masculinization or feminization. Maybe they're not quite ready to have the gender affirming surgery, but they want to start slowly kind of transitioning.
That's what's great about you having that experience in the psychosocial world and the assessment of the patient, because not everybody really thinks, they may think they're ready for this, but maybe they're not. So maybe some slow hand holding and honoring that and guiding them through. There's a lot involved. We're therapists too, right?
Absolutely.
in our industry, whether it's a lady who thinks her lips should be bigger or larger, or she feels that she's too gaunt. Whatever those things are, those complaints, they come in, we have to see them as the whole person. And I like that holistic approach as the whole person, the whole individual. And experience has helped you with this. And you will have a successful practice because your foundation is strong. You will. I already know.
Thank you.
Super successful. You already are. You landed on 2 feet and you've opened. This is a big undertaking for all of you listening that are interested in opening up your own facility. Know that this came with a lot of years of hard work and preparation and still education.
Absolutely.
You and I met a few weeks ago at an educational platform, and I just went to another one last weekend, and you're going to cadaver class. So we never stop learning, right? We never stop learning. So Danielle, this weekend, talk about education. I was blessed to be a part of the Gliderma Gain, their first webinar launch. And I got to actually spend the afternoon, late afternoon, with Lori Robinson. And I'm telling you, she feels the way we feel, and it's showing in what she's doing. She started Aesthetic Immersion, and their facility is unbelievable. This, if anyone doesn't know, go ahead and look them up. You can also look Lori up at, I believe, at Injector. I will have that. I will show that on up in a little screen right here. If you guys want to look Lori up, she's amazing. But it's called Aesthetic Immersion. Mm-hmm. And they're trying to change the way we think of being an aesthetic provider, not so much as regulating, but educating, and in a deep way, which is what we need to do. So shout out to Lori and her group at Aesthetic Immersion, because it's amazing. And you've got our support right here. So kudos to you, Lori. So speaking of med spa, another topic I'd like to hit on is the new weight loss. Well, weight loss has always been there, right? Women and men will do anything to lose 5 pounds. But semagluten, Ozempic, I believe Mounjaro, which is called, and you might correct me,
tirzepatide.
There's a list, right?
There's a whole slew of them, yeah.
Do you provide, I know that you do that in your practice, but that also is becoming the Wild West because people are able to order this online, locally too, just from a local provider online. They'll ship it to your house. What are you seeing in this world?
So it's an issue. It's a real issue, and I do think that it deserves some attention. So thank you for bringing it up. First and foremost, I absolutely think that wellness is paramount, right? If you want to look good, feeling good kind of comes with the picture. So, for a lot of us, especially as we start to age, it is harder to lose weight. Hormones change, and that's one of the reasons why I've also, brought in hormone replacement as well, because I think it's an important part of the picture. But weight loss, it's not going anywhere. It's always going to be trendy. And just like everything else in aesthetics, once something comes out, there's always going to be a copycat looking how to make their version of it. And for me personally, so I do order these medications, but I have a source that is 100% vetted. And if you are a provider and you are not vetting your source of where your products are coming from, you are running a lot of risks there, And I've heard providers say before, like, oh, this is dangerous for my license, or I don't want to risk my license. Forget about your license for a second. What about your patients, right? So again, do no harm. If you don't know where your products are coming from and you have not seen an actual quality control sheet that explains the content of what is in an IV vial or a subcutaneous injection vial, I'm sorry, but it shouldn't be injected in anybody. These are injectable medications, and they are foreign for our bodies, right? If it's an HA filler, it is an implant of sorts, right? And these can have complications. So knowing where that medication comes from is really important. And we're kind of at this double-edged sword, right? Because California has made it illegal for compounding pharmacies to create it, because I think they were seeing that some of these were being sourced from overseas. And when something is sourced from overseas, you do not actually know what the quality control is, right?
Don't they have to be, they can purchase them here in California, but it has to be an FDA regulated compound pharmacy, right?
That's correct. But even with that now, it has become harder and harder. These are still medications that the companies themselves, I think, are retaining, and they can be very expensive. And so people are looking for cheaper ways to get it and to have it made. I'm fortunate enough to have a wonderful relationship with a laboratory that creates these peptides that I use. But I know that they're safe. I know that they're efficacious, and there's nothing that I wouldn't do to a patient that I wouldn't do to myself. And I believe in these things that strongly enough. But if you are looking to market these medications cheaply to patients, getting them in the door, and you don't know where they come from.
See, people, that is happening. So you need to make sure you trust your provider. And you can be open with your provider. You would have no problem with your patient asking you, where are you getting my semagluten from? Would you?
I would have no problem with it. I have a report that says semaglutide, the percentage, the quality control measures. It's an actual laboratory report that shows its purity. And I think, again, anytime you're talking about an injection, you have to. Again, this is not the hospital, right? When you work in the hospital, you trust your medications coming from the pharmacy. They're good. You're not worried about that, right? When the nurses dispense medications, they're coming from the Pyxis system. It's safe. But when you have a practice, and even if you don't own that practice, even if you're just working in that practice, remember, wherever those medications are being sourced, you are the one administering them. So I think it is really important.
It's your license.
It is your license.
And your patient.
And it's your patient, right?
Let's not forget why we do this in the first place.
Exactly.
We want to sleep at night.
Absolutely.
And we want quality patient care, and we want to make patients happy and well, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for clarifying that a bit. I don't know if we could have a whole podcast on semagluten, right? And there's been those podcasts out there, but maybe I'll have you back on and we'll dive a little deeper into that world. I'd like to understand that a little bit more. Okay, I got a question for you.
Bring it.
Do you aspirate or do you not aspirate?
Ooh, good question. And the answer is yes, I aspirate. I aspirate, I use cannulas. I always try to take the safest route. And there are sometimes issues when you're aspirating, right?
Absolutely.
And so, if it's an area where you need to be on periosteum, you pull back on that syringe a little bit and you can come off the bone, right? And so you can change your trajectory a little bit, and that can be a little bit unnerving. So I think it's important to kind of really master your skill at being able to get to the plane you need to be. Again, knowing your anatomy, I think moving and constantly having, your finger over the pulse of what's happening and where you're actually injecting is important. But to be safe, yes, I do. Are there situations where I feel comfortable not aspirating? Yes, there are. But especially, I hate to say that I don't, because I don't want someone to take that and run with it, because I think,
Again,
safety
experience.
Safe. Totally.
Experience.
Totally.
For people, you kind of explained it. For some of you who don't know what that is, it's when you're receiving an injectable and they will draw back the syringe plunger and you're looking for blood, basically. But there has been studies that have shown an aspiration, when you're actually pulling back, it can take 5 seconds for you to actually pull on the plunger before that jelly-like fluid, depending on how pliable it is or thick or G-primed, before you'll actually see a flush of blood to know that you should maybe possibly pull out and start again. But it is a loaded question. I love listening to everyone's answer.
It is loaded for sure. And I think, the real answer is that it depends. And yes, I am usually always going to. There are certain situations where I think you need to be more cognizant. So again, coming back to patient's history, is this someone who's had surgery? Is this someone who might have some anatomical differences? In any situation like that where I'm even a little bit concerned, I'm not 100% sure, is this vessel here? I'm going to aspirate, and I am going to take the time to watch and look for that flashback, that return. There's a lot of new data coming out about VOs and the way that we manage VOs. And I think it's just really important to stay ahead of that. Even at the training that we were at, they were talking about some new techniques that we might be seeing for the treatment of VOs. So,
the butterfly needle.
Yeah. Cannulating the vessel.
Wow. All kinds of great stuff.
And I don't think that's easy. I mean, I think that's a skill that's going to take time, but it makes a lot of sense. And I think, again, in this role, it is so important to just constantly stay educated. If it's reading journals, if it's going to the meetings, just having a community, a forum where you can talk to, your colleagues and peers and present your bad cases. If you have an adverse reaction, don't be ashamed to present it to the community, because that's a learning lesson, not only for you, but maybe for others too. So
we're very, I've been in this industry 30 years, and we're a very isolated industry. So we're by ourselves, we're protective over our stuff. When you work in the hospital with other nurses, it's not like that. You go to trainings with each other, you do all these things, but in our industry, we become very isolated, which makes it dangerous. So having a community and reaching out to others, other nurses, other PAs, doctors, and having your people is what I like to call it. You need your people. I'm one of your people now, and you're one of mine.
Definitely. It's important.
So don't be afraid to go to a training, find somebody that's local and say, hey, can I get your number? Can we go to lunch? Let's get together, because you need those resources when you're in a situation that you're uncomfortable with or unsure. Sometimes you just need a second set of eyes. So know that there's people out there that care about you and want you to be successful that are in your industry. We're not all afraid to be friends with others because of protectiveness. We really want to share our mentor others. Do you feel like that?
100%. I mean, it's, there's always going to be a competitive component to aesthetics, right?
Always.
There's a med spa in almost every corner and every shopping plaza, especially here in Southern California. So, of course, I think there is that certain nature of protectiveness, but I think we need to spread away from that. There are enough patients to go around for all. And you know what? You might be great at doing something that, maybe I want to send my patient to you, and that's okay. I think we have to just have that reciprocity and be able to have that open line of communication with providers, as opposed to, putting our guards up and being afraid of the competition. Don't be afraid of it.
Don't be afraid of it.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid of it. Okay. Close to the final question. But what have you seen as the biggest scam in our industry of aesthetics?
Ooh, the biggest scam.
Or big to you? What do you think's been the biggest kind of? There's a lot of things, right?
What I will say, for better or worse, I do think that a lot of injectors now are seeing this need for education. And this is definitely a loaded question. And again, I don't mean to stir waves with this, but I think, in that need for education, I think that some people are, maybe posing as I don't want to say posing. Ooh, that sounds so bad.
No.
But I think certain people are credentialing themselves as experts in the field. And, I think that can be a little bit dangerous. I think that, absolutely, there are credentialed experts in this field, and I think experience and time is probably one of the factors that those people need to see. Whether you're an RN or a PA or an NP or an MD, it doesn't necessarily make you a better or a worse injector. I mean, we've seen the gamut regardless of what the field is. So I think it's being very careful about who you choose to learn from, and making sure that those educational offerings are legitimate. And I've seen a lot of people lose a lot of money on some of these courses, and it is a scam, and it's a shame because it has gotten very expensive to educate yourself in this field. Again, it's a cash field, and so people are expected to pay cash when they're going to these courses. It is not cheap. And if you try to find cheap education, most of the time, it may not be the quality that I think we need to be seeing out there. So, I always like to tag with some type of organization. Lori Robertson is wonderful. I saw her at AmSpa last year. I sat with her at her booth for a little bit. She's fantastic. And there are those experts in the field. Don't be fooled by the influencers and those that necessarily have a huge Instagram following or TikTok following. It doesn't necessarily mean their skill is up to par.
No.
So I
And there are those out there that are up to par.
Absolutely.
But most of the time, you've really got to do your research. And that's how I feel. That's why I wanted to do this podcast, because I feel like that really will separate in your 1 minute reel that this influencer or this person that's got all this education that they're selling is showing you on Instagram or TikTok. If you put that to the test and actually sat them down in a chair and had them talk for an hour and try to explain their education and learn from them, I'm not so sure we would get that. So I really think podcasts and things like these kind of forums are going to be the future. This is where people are going to go as their go-to really be able to identify that something's legitimate. Because as you're sitting here speaking, I did not know you prior to speaking to you. I could have judged you from media, right? And now look, I've learned so many amazing things. You're one sharp cookie. You've paid your dues. You're opening up your own practice. You don't go out guns a-blazing. You are an outlaw, and welcome to the Beauty Outlaw. And I got a new friend, and I'm excited.
Absolutely. And I'm excited too. And I think, just one final thought on that. We were blessed to be able to go to that recent training with Palette Resources. And, I'm going to plug it because I think
Absolutely.
Palette is just such an incredible forum if you are new or even if you're not new. Again, it can be
still go
so
to them.
expensive.
I love those.
They're great. I mean, learning from Dr. Yolen and Dr. Marcus, I mean, how often do you get to be in a room with Dr. Yolen and have him guiding your
Rarely.
hand injecting, right? So, and it's not so expensive that you can't do it.
reasonable.
It's very reasonable. So not to say that cheap education is bad education. It's just knowledgeable about where you're getting your education from, right? There are resources out there. And I hope in the future, these podcasts and these types of platforms will make it easier.
We should shout out to Palette because Palette, you can go online and take an anatomy course.
Yep.
Now, it's not the same as in person, but I would recommend doing that first because they walk you through the layers of the skin. They show you a cadaver. It is and it's free.
It is.
It's free. So that would be my starting point. I love Palette. That's why I go to these. I think I try to hit one of those once a year, especially when Dr. Yolen's in town.
Yeah.
Or he's always in town, but when he does his here in he usually does it in South County, where we got to meet. And new nurses, new PAs, new people in the industry. If you're curious about the industry, go to Palette.
Absolutely.
You've got the top of the elite injectors and physicians and plastic surgeons, right? So we just gave them a big shout out.
Yeah.
I think they're great.
They are. And it's a great chance to just meet community too. If you're not sure
Absolutely.
where to start in this industry, it can seem a little bit overwhelming, but just start going to any and everything that you can. Go to the rep sponsored dinners. You're going to meet your neighbors. You're going to meet other people in the industry. And that's how you start to build and you start to grow and you learn. Find a mentor that that you can trust and that you align with.
Alignment's important too. So thank you, Danielle, for being here.
Thank you, Jared.
So what I'd like to do is give us a toast to the
Okay.
future of aesthetics.
Let's do it.
And to anybody that wants to come on board our philosophy here, trying to shed light on the wild, wild west of what's out there. And thank you for sharing your story. And thank you for giving me your day. And thank you for giving us your experience and knowledge because it was awesome to listen to you.
Thank you. It was just incredible to be here. So thank you for having me. I'm super appreciative and just keep doing what you're doing. This
We're
is
gonna
going to
try.
spread like wildfire and I'm so excited to see where it goes.
Subscribe.
Yes.
Subscribe because we're a small little guy right now. I've been in the industry a long time, didn't need social media, never needed that in my, to build a business. And now when I wanted to do something new, this was the platform that I needed. So subscribe, go hit those people I told you about. Check out Lori Robertson, check out Aesthetic Immersion, and check out Palette. Those are great resources, safe resources, and educational platforms that I recommend, Danielle recommends.
Absolutely.
So have a great day, and we will see you next time on the Beauty Outlaw. There we go. Well, cheers,
go.
cheers. We can
Cheers.
cheers.